Oh, 1 second. Sorry, someone's asking me about the Zoom link. Okay, now I'll actually get started. Welcome to today's mentorship meeting. Today, as you can see from the first slide, it's a little different than usual. We're gonna start up our new presentation format and curriculum this mentorship meeting, and I will send you guys the link in the chat to the presentation for today. There's the link. I'm gonna let. Okay. And now we'll move on to the agenda for today.
Okay, so today we're going to cover 4 different areas. The first one, we're going to kind of introduce the content that we'll be going over in the next months, in the next few months. And then we'll kind of cover what teaching speaking is like, because that is the focus of today's lesson. We're going to dive into some teaching topics that relate to speaking. And then lastly, we have some tips and resources that tutors and country directors can both use.
So we're going to start off and introduce a couple of the new members of the mentorship team. Today we only have a handful of us, but luckily we do have both of our new members. So as most of you know, I'm Tori. I'm the executive of the mentorship team. And I'm a junior in high school this year in Michigan. And I'll hand it off to Francie.
Hi, my name is Francie. I am also a junior and I'm a junior from California.
I'm Shloka and I'm a sophomore from Chicago.
Hi guys, I'm Naomi Hong. I'm a mentorship specialist and I am a senior from California as well.
Okay, so we just kind of found this quote by someone named Edmund de Waal, and he's very established in like the literary world and stuff like that. And he says, with language, you are at home anywhere, which we kind of believe sums up our statement and mission, you know, as people, part of the mentorship team, etc.
So today we have a new mentorship meeting layout. These slideshows will contain the mentorship content for tutors for every 2 weeks and will be linked to the Asian Passion Program curriculum. Mentorship meetings will switch between Mondays at 8 p.m. EST and Sundays at 4 p.m. EST every 2 weeks to accommodate for our tutors in different time zones. You are not required to attend both, but attending one every 2 weeks is highly recommended.
Some of the usual reminders. Just remember to fill out the upcoming PVSA order form, and remember to be logging your hours. That'll be due on October 31st. In order for you to get recognized for your volunteer hours during the December awards ceremony. Yeah, I'm sending the links to all the stuff in the chat. During the December awards ceremony, which you also have to RSVP for ahead of time. So make sure if you want to participate and attend the award ceremony, you RSVP. And then our usual tutoring policies, please see page 10 and beyond of the APP information document that I also posted in the chat. And just make sure that the tutor contract must be turned in, or your tutoring will be terminated.
Okay, so before we actually dive into the content lesson for today, we're first going to go over how to kind of differentiate the different levels that your tutor may be at. So like if they're a beginner, some things that you could possibly do for the different like activities we have in later slides is maybe teaching easy grammar usage, being familiar with like verbs, nouns, adjectives, and stuff like that. If your tutor is somewhat familiar, you can kind of review some grammar and practice some of its usage from the beginner level. And then there's intermediate, which is more like kind of slightly fluent, where you would maybe cover harder grammar topics. And lastly is advanced, where it's more like more fluent, more familiar with a lot of different grammar and different idiomatic concepts. But ultimately, it's really important to make sure that you know where your student is at, because a lot of the lesson planning really comes from how you wish to teach the content, and it's important to classify those different levels.
We've also provided you with some general ideas to structure lesson development, kind of from going, understanding the basics, then utilizing this knowledge, practicing speaking when you're in lessons with students, etc., and also providing homework so your students are able to go over the things that they've learned and really remember them. And then again, some examples, could you be going over basic grammar usage in one of your lessons, moving on to speaking single sentences with your students and stuff like that, having slower conversations to try and amp up the difficulty of your lessons, and then assigning vocab lists or practice as homework.
Okay, so now we're going to actually head into the main lesson today, which is a speaking lesson, and how you and your tutor, you and your student can kind of start learning about the topic, which is what is your favorite food? So moving on forward, for a lot of our different speaking content lessons and mentorship meetings, we want to incorporate a topic so that not only will students get to learn about more really interesting phrases, nouns, and stuff like that, they can also really learn about speaking and the different parts to becoming fluent in a language.
So our lesson plan today will consist of 3 sections. Section 1 is about warming up with readings, listening, practice, and review. Section 2 is about teaching new sentence structures with examples and activities. And section 3 is about conversation practice with new sentence structures, and then you can practice using them.
And here are some vocabulary terms in this lesson, and I'm just going to briefly read them aloud. And so, to order, to eat, to leave, ramen, sushi, ice cream, restaurant, menu, waiter/waitress.
So obviously, these vocabulary terms we're going to use them inside actual speaking structures. So below we kind of listed just like 6 easy to harder sentence structures, and you can try using the vocabulary on the previous slide to create like examples with your student. So the first one is how maybe you can explain to your student is where can I, and you can add a verb and a noun, which would likely be a place. So like, where can I find a restaurant? Where can I find McDonald's? And you can kind of work through putting in verbs and nouns with your student to get familiar with this sentence structure. The next one is what's your favorite? And then this is pretty simple. You would just try to add like a noun after. So what's your favorite food? What's your favorite sport? It would be more of a general noun that has like a category. And because this topic is food, you could probably ask something food related, like what is your favorite drink? Obviously, like if your student wants to try something else than food, try something other than food, they're welcome to do so. The third example of a sentence structure is we'd better and then ... So for this, you would maybe tell your student, oh, like we better leave now, later, or like any duration of time. Or you could be like, we better sit down now, like while waiting for a waitress at a restaurant. So the next example is I would rather dot 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 than dot dot dot. And for this sentence structure, I would tell my student to insert two verbs into the dot dot dots. So an example of that would be I would rather sleep, and the second verb would be eat. So I would rather sleep than eat. And that is how you can kind of explain to your students on what to plug in for the blank areas. The fifth example is this dot 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 is dot dot dot. So I included this more so we can kind of like describe an noun or object. So in this case, using an example from the vocab slide, we're going to use ice cream. So this ice cream, which is a noun, is very delicious, and delicious is an adjective. So you could try plugging in different words and playing around with this sentence structure because it is also fairly easy. And then the last speaking structure is I would like dot dot dot. So in this blank, you would probably add either a noun and or a verb to form a sentence. So I said and or because you can either just have a noun itself or have a noun and a verb together. So an example of this would be I would like to order mapo tofu. So order is a verb, mapo tofu is a noun, but you could also just say I would like to order, which is more easy if you're interested in having your student kind of practice with that first before adding on the other parts of speech.
And then further lesson practice for speaking, you can, an example of applying some of the topics we just talked about in the speaking sentence formation with the verbs and adjectives and the subjects. You can act out a script or situation with your student. In this example, you would hold a conversation with your student regarding going out to eat. So in this situation, Lisa says, you would take the position of either Lisa or Annie and speak the written parts to practice the different sentence structures. In this situation, Lisa and Annie are best friends, so you use more informal language with one another. Please make sure to translate unknown parts to your student if they don't understand. And then after speaking, you can experiment and switch roles. So just reading off the script, Lisa says, let's go eat together. We'd better go now. What's your favorite food? And then Annie says, where can we find a sushi restaurant? I love sushi. Already you can see there's a lot of like vocab and inflection you can practice with your student based on like context. Like with the inflection, Lisa seems very excited with all the exclamation points. And then Annie is like, and like seems more indecisive and thinking. And then you apply vocabulary like sushi and restaurant and food and going out to eat. And continuing on, Lisa says, I don't really want to go to a sushi restaurant. I'd rather eat noodles than eat sushi. And then they end up going to a noodles restaurant where in this line, they also introduce the new vocab noodles and kind of practice the sentence format. I would rather blank than blank. And you kind of like integrate what you've already learned with your student. And then in finishing it off with the script, Annie says, this ramen is delicious or terrible, depending on like you or your student's preference. I would or would not like to eat more. And then Lisa finally says, let's leave and go home. So there's a lot of experimentation with the speaking practice and a lot of integration of what you and your student had just practiced and learned.
So these are some conversation practice and practice questions. For instance, when ordering food or anything anywhere, such as restaurants, fast food chains, or even at the cashier, it is always proper to use respectable terms, especially when speaking in a socially acceptable way, such as saying please and thank you. And to improve your conversations, it is important that you continuously practice communicating aloud with a friend or a family member, and these daily practices can help a lot.
Okay, so keep in mind when speaking, you want to focus on 4 things, which is pronunciation, fluency, usage, and tone. So with pronunciation, you can repeat words over with your students to practice. And then for fluency, you can try to repetitively use sentence structure so that it becomes familiar. Then for usage, make sure that the grammar, sentence structure, or conjugations of verbs are accurate. And then within tone, if asking a question, you can incorporate the use of different tones and expressions. Okay, so it's optional, but if you'd like to cover more with your student, you can watch the video that's linked right there, and then pause the video and slowly go over everything with your student.
And for assigning homework, in brief, just make sure you assign homework. Homework can be found via the resources on the next slide or anything else the students want to work on. And homework is very important since it tends to help our students develop problem solving and time management. So just remember to assign homework.
And here's some extra speaking resources. I don't have the exact links to post in the chat, but these are some resources that you can use to integrate and develop your lessons. Like for this specific speaking assignment, we focused a lot on grammar. And then we also have regular lesson development resources, and then additional resources that help you develop like activities you can use to develop your student speaking, and then worksheets you could use to help them practice or even to make a homework assignment for them. And we're not quite done because I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. So I will open those right now, and I'll stop the share. We can pause our recording and everything. So to meet with your, I'm going to open them up to meet with your country directors and the usual meets. Just if you're having trouble getting into your room, make a reaction, like raise your hand or anything, and I'll unmute you and help you out.
Oh, can I get the co-host?
Yeah, sorry.